Hello, my name is Derick. I'm chairman of Movie Town, or the company Multi-Cinemas Limited. And I'm here to talk a little bit about my story and my journey and my entrepreneurial experiences over the years. I've had a very interesting but challenging journey over the last 20 years. And it all started way back when I was in Trinidad as a junior school, realizing that I always wanted to do something on my own. I always was a dreamer. And I found myself, as I look back, realizing that maybe I did have these entrepreneurial attributes, that I wanted to lead, I wanted to do something on my own, and primarily to be my own boss at the end of the day. Around, I suppose, my teens, I left Trinidad and I went to university and found myself, again, thinking about what will I do at the end of the day. I did my business degree at Western University, Ontario, and I then would find myself many times writing letters to McDonald's and writing letters to bakeries and saying to myself, I really wanted to, having gone through the business part, want to get involved with being my own boss. So I would tend to find myself looking at those kind of franchises. But of course, they were not cheap, and being a student, I had to sort of maybe find a job and continue life like most other people. But I would always dream and think about, I'd love to own my own business. How can I get about doing that? So during the summer time, I would go to various employment agencies, or I would look at whether it was selling encyclopedias or getting myself, selling ice cream cones in a mall. And those are the kind of things I did, trying to figure out and buy some time when in fact an opportunity would present itself. Well, eventually I sort of got frustrated and I came back to Trinidad and said, okay, I was an accountant at that time and I had a job, but it wasn't a great paying job. But I still again thought, well, maybe Trinidad at that time, this was in the 80s, was booming. The oil situation was pretty healthy, and I decided that I would try and see if I could get into some business. Before I left Canada, Toronto specifically, I was fascinated by electronic games, what we know now as Nintendo and Atari and so on and so forth. And to me it was a very simple business. If I got into the electronic video game business, I thought it didn't require too much more than maybe a loan from my father, who did help me a little bit. And I got into the electronic games business, which I couldn't ask for a better time. The timing of moving from the mechanical type of games to the video games, where you had Asteroids and Atari, and of course that is so long ago now, to where we are into Xbox in the home, streaming and all these things that have developed from that initial investment. So I got into the game business, and it was operated under the name Games World. For those who are my age would remember that that was the first start, and it was at Long Circle Mall. Well, it did very, very well. It was not a big investment, but I got into it at the right time, both at the mall and at the airport, and it was really my first starting point. I got into my own little business. I started actually with a number 13 machines, which you might think was a good number or a bad number. And it really started to do well. I suppose Trinidadians, and the youth love to line and play video games, which they still do today. And it really started to do well for me. And I said, well, I didn't have a lot of money then, but maybe if I created a kind of a franchise, maybe people would buy into it and I would get my money up front. And I did exactly that. I started selling the whole Games World ideas, make money having fun, or various types of slogans which caught the imagination of people. And soon Games World became something like 35 stores, which I sold up front. You have to prepare yourself to, once you have the idea and you have it sort of crystallized, and then you have to start looking at, well, can I get financing? What are the potentials? Sometimes you're asked to do a business proposal. You have to do some research, and all of this is a time when you have limited resources and you have all these challenges. And specifically in Trinidad, and maybe a lot of other entrepreneurs have experienced it, where you don't really have enthusiasm behind any project. It's always, everybody tends to think negatively, and especially with a greenfield project as a cityplex. You know, the negatives were 90% of everybody I spoke to, but the 10% was me and my few friends, and the fact that we did feel that we loved our movies and we wanted to have a better conditions to enjoy seeing, you know, Titanic or whatever. So that is a period of time that you really have to soul search. You have a lot of challenges, trying to convince people, and you can be easily frustrated and say, you know what, to hell with it, you know, I'll go to do something else. And that is one of the big challenges you're faced with. But you persevere, you start to really understand the project, you believe in it, you feel it, and you know this thing can work. And it is your job to convince those people who are not too much endowed in the information that you have. I'd like to take this opportunity also to congratulate the Youth Business Trinidad and Tobago for their continued support of the Global Entrepreneurship Week and for their continued involvement in making lots of these things happen. They must continue to encourage the youth to achieve their goals, to give them the necessary support, both financially and support in other areas, to achieve their goals and their dreams.